Hey, good evening, Indiana. Welcome to the Who's Left Podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I am broadcasting live from Bloomington. Tonight, we welcome union organizer and host of the My Labor radio show, Mark Gevaart. We'll talk all about the decline in union density over the decades, conflict between blue-collar and public sector unions, the increasing uptick in membership among service workers, and where labor fits in the AI data center debate. Now, before we welcome Mark, a quick look at some upcoming shows. Next Thursday, I will be live with 4th District Congressional candidate Drew Cox, followed by State House candidate up in the Fighting 81st, Sharon White, on Friday. Put those both in your calendar and join us if you can, but if you can't, they will be available as a podcast shortly afterward. And we can't do any of this without your support. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall any content. We don't sell out to advertisers. We don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the entire Progressive Indiana network that we refuse to hide valuable information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, I understand. That's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding articles to your people. You get us the next time. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let us welcome our good friend, Mark Gevaart. Mark, welcome.
How you doing, Scott? Great to be here. I appreciate you asking me to be on. That's a great opportunity to talk about unions, and that's what's important for America right now. Because with a lot of things that are going on right now, people lose sight of the fact that union membership is important. You opened the show by talking about how the density of unions has changed dramatically, and it's still here, but darn lower than where our grandparents and their parents were years ago.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, that's where we're going to start. But before we do that, go ahead and shamelessly promote yourself just a little bit. Tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me on Blue Sky at My Labor Radio. Same with Instagram, My Labor Radio. And Twitter, I refuse to call it anything but that, My Labor Radio. And the love I have about Twitter is I have over 30,000 people blocked right now, and that continues to grow. So I've set this algorithm so that I can get all the things I want and look at labor stuff and promote those type of things too. Who's Left on top of that? On Facebook, you can find us at My Labor Radio. You can also find us on TikTok at My Labor Radio. And a lot of what I'm doing in the last few months on TikTok is more promotion of folks that are doing apprenticeships and getting ready for this spring here. Things are really happening and unrolling because this is a great time for kids that are in high school or right out of school thinking about, hey, I'd like to try and maybe get into a trade, be it a bricklayer or a carpenter or an IBEW for electrical stuff or whatever it would be. Those chances are out there. So those are great things that are happening, and I'm promoting a lot of the folks that are putting that out there and talking about stuff. A lot of union folks are there, and once you spend time looking for those kind of things, you don't see a lot of dance videos or music videos. You really start focusing on those things because your algorithm starts saying, hey, oh, that's what you're putting out? Okay, so we'll send you more of that content. So for those that say, oh, TikTok is just for dancing kids, well, they do have their place, but so does union. So that's what's important for me.
It is what you make of it with all these things, and we'll talk about AI at the end later too. All of these things are tools. It's about how you use them. Party politics is like that too. The parties can be tools. It depends on how you use them. But let's start, Mark. Let's talk about making America great again, right? Trump came in talking about this, and I generally think, and I could be wrong, but his base is a lot of older folks for the most part,
Yep.
particularly old white folks,
Yep.
who do remember a time in America when you could buy a house and have a car and raise your family and send your kids to school on a single salary. And I think they've forgotten a lot of what happened between then and now that led
Mhm.
us to that point. But if you look at the golden era of America that they want to take us back to, I think it's the 1950s. Now, some of them I think want to take us back to the 1850s, but that's
Yeah.
I don't think that's the majority of them.
Right.
But if you look at the 1950s, boy, union density was a third, maybe a little higher
Hot. Yeah.
of workers were union members, and the top marginal tax rate on the wealthiest income earners was above 90%. So let's sort of start there. Mark, what the hell happened, man?
Well, the biggest thing was that people started feeling comfortable in their union membership, so much so that they didn't really care about whether someone else got theirs as long as they were getting what they had or needed to have. I mean, we're talking about 50s. They had lunch counters at like a Woolworths. If you're not familiar with that, it was an old chain store, and they had an actual lunch counter with a chef who would cook and a waitress who would serve you. Well, those folks were unionized in many cases. It was very rare, bigger cities, as Chicago and New York, Philadelphia, things like that. But the point is that was retail. We're at like 15.1 million Americans are in retail right now. And the percentage of people that are represented by a union is like 1.7%. It's pathetic. We have
Wow.
plenty of room for growth there. But that's what those baristas at Starbucks are doing. Let's get back to what you asked about, though. What happened was everybody got this feeling about that rugged individualism. My family's fine. We're getting what we need. We're taking care of us. And it was just one salary did it. I come from a family that father worked for a large company. Mom was a school teacher. It worked out great. Mom was home in the summer when the kids were off of school. Those type of things were fun. You didn't need to have mom didn't have to get right away. She could get us on the school bus and get us to school. Everything worked out great. That's the nuclear family. That doesn't exist anymore. Nothing like that exists anymore. You had one car, then you we got a second car because mom had a car, dad had a car. Very rare is that happening now. Most folks are struggling so bad that the one job they have, they don't want to even get them 40 hours because then I'll have to pay them benefits. Damn. Well, I got to get 20 hours here, 23 hours over there. It's senseless. And you're trying to schedule yourself in back and forth with it. Not to mention, let's talk about both parties who haven't raised the minimum wage since 2009. 725? No. And I'm still pissed off that all these people that work at restaurants are still at 213. Come on.
Oh
How do
my
you get
God.
anywhere? It's a pathetic situation. Relying on
travesty.
tips. You can't make anything work. The unfortunate part too is people don't even see it until you are unemployed by no fault of your own. And once you're unemployed, the state of Indiana is the worst at getting you your unemployment. They set it up to say, oh, we've got fraudulent things going on. They love to say that, whether it's voting or getting
Oh, yeah.
unemployment money. There's fraudulent things. We got to stop the fraud. Well, the fraud's being perpetrated by the people who are running these companies and taking money on my back and yours and everybody else's and paying into this system. But then the state just holds the money. You're going to get $350 a week. Are you kidding me? You can't even put gas in a car and eat anything.
Mm-mm.
You're certainly not going to make rent on something like that. Somehow they think that you can't wait for your unemployment so you can just sit around and do nothing. Doesn't
Right.
exist. It doesn't exist. That's their fantasy world. So we're in this fantasy world that plenty of people vote based on that because you talked about if someone's comfortable and had this job for 20 years and never had to suffer and just keeps going to work and I get a paycheck and everything's fine. I don't have to worry about everybody else over here. Well, those people need to figure it out. Those people need to get a job like I got. There's so few of those jobs. That's the problem. We got a lot of work to do to make America great again. It comes back to taxing people that deserve to be taxed that way and can still live a great, lavish life, but take care of the working class. And we have missed that. the Democrats are trying their damnedest, but let me tell you, these Republicans are taking rights away as fast as they can get back to legislation to try and do it again. And this most recent session in Indianapolis is already showing us that.
Ain't that the truth? So, I think a lot of the attacks on unions sort of began. I mean, listen, they were always there. The bosses never liked the unions.
Yeah.
But in the 1970s, when the economy wasn't doing so hot, I think the bosses, blamed the extravagant union contracts, right? Never mind that the entire economy was like built on a house of cards propped up on cheap foreign oil, and when that went away with the founding of OPEC, it was like, okay, here is an opportunity, a crisis to exploit, where we can break the backs of these unions, and it happened.
Right.
I mean, over time, but if you look at the end of the long 70s and just a decade of stagnation in the economy,
yep,
here comes old Ronald Reagan.
Oh, he's going to save
a lot
the
of promises,
day. Right.
and a lot of folks, union folks, bought into that. You hear of the Reagan Democrat, right?
I hate that term, but it was real. It's real.
It was white working class folks who oftentimes were unionized, bought into what Reagan was selling, and then he turned right around and broke the backs of the unions, didn't he?
Yeah, immediately. In fact, because within the first 2 years he was there in his first term, early 80s, the PATCO strike, which is the air traffic controllers. Now, government unions are handled a little bit differently, where you can and can't go on strike type of thing. This situation, these folks were trying to negotiate a deal under the Carter administration. It wasn't a new thing when Reagan got there. Hey, we're going to go on strike now. This was something that had brewed for many years, and they finally said, if we don't take an action here, we'll get nothing. So basically, the Ronald Reagan team came in and said, you'll get nothing, because they were the new negotiators to deal with at that point.
Yeah.
And as it turns, they went on strike and said, we're going to challenge you. And the first thing he did gave corporate America a huge, big smile end to end on that big table to say, we're loving this. Yes, let's go after the unions. And that's what they did. Enter, of course, too, favored nation trading with China and many other things, and Mexico. And, they pushed everything out of here because they decided that manufacturing didn't have to happen here. If we could get it done somewhere else cheaper, there it goes, which is now container ships weren't a thing to the level we see them today back in those days either, because there wasn't that much stuff being imported like that. Cars, vehicles, things like that were coming over here, but not to something to sit on a Walmart shelf or some other store too. So those type of things, we shipped things away. The smallest of things were shipped away, especially textiles. That was the biggest thing to go first. Your socks, your underwear, your shirts, those type of things, blue jeans, all that stuff left to Mexico immediately. And those were all good jobs. Some of them union, plenty of them not, but they were American jobs that were paying for something. They're making somebody's life comfortable in the Carolinas or down south or out in California where they were making Levi's. Send it out of here, get it out of here. And that's never to come back at all. There's very few people manufacturing clothing in the United States right now, and even less of them are union. So it's a good thing to see that some of it's coming back. There's some blue jean makers and some other shirt makers here that are really understanding, okay, to sell some of this stuff, we do need to bring it back here. I just talked to a gentleman recently in the last month here who has a company in the Carolinas called Camel Hill Mills? Camel City Mills. I'm sorry, I forget the name of them, but he bought the old looms that made socks and then put them together, cleaned them up, got them operational, and is making socks now in America that hadn't been done in 60 years. It's very cool stuff. So, I mean, there's small little stories, but again, there's so much room for growth to do things here in the United States. And data centers are another thing we're going to talk about a little bit later here probably, but that is a growth thing that's changing. I mean, we're doing great things with the IBEW, putting a whole bunch of people to work. There's people in an apprenticeship program that are learning about the electrical trade right now as they build these data centers. You need hundreds of people to do that thing. But once it's built and it's humming and causing all kinds of other environmental things at the same time, running 365 days a year all the time, that's employing a hell of a lot less people. We are hitting a flash in the pan right now, which is a good thing because we're going to get some people into the apprenticeship program. Because if you look at how all these trades are running, we have room for growth. There are no genders anymore. These jobs don't have genders. And I have an argument with some older person who says, back in my day, I never worked with a woman. And there was no reason for that. They need to do this job or that job. Yeah, that's why nursing's there, okay? Or teaching. That's what everybody seems to keep giving that to them. The issue is, for me, is jobs don't have genders. Let's let the sisters show us what's going on. And they're, to a person, figuring it out quickly. They're doing great work. And it's fun to watch because I listen to some of these guys bitch about it only to turn around and go, you know what? She knows what she's doing. Perfect. You didn't give her a chance, but here we are today. So there's a lot of opportunity in the building trades. There's a lot of opportunity as an operating engineer, running a crane. I mean, it's not just shoveling dirt all the time or pouring cement. There's plenty of good things that are going on, but we have to get ourselves out of our comfort zone to try and do that. I mean, a person that's showing up every day to show up for 2 different jobs somewhere, trying to make ends meet, needs to take a second and think about what they've got and maybe say, hey, maybe if I do go over here and look at this apprenticeship program and see if that's something I could do, give that opportunity a chance. Because, I mean, I have a factory job and I'm lucky with that. And I've done it for many years. That's not what everybody can get into, to walk into that. And then that's getting watered down too, is what we're giving the new hire versus when I was a new hire in the 80s. So it's a long way off.
Well, Mark, there's a lot there.
Sorry.
And no. It's good. But like, I want to focus on, a couple things. And I think the gender aspect, I was going to ask, why organized labor rank and file union members fell for the Reagan pitch. I mean, listen, he was always working for the boss, right? He was never a union guy, had decades on the record as such.
Mm-hmm.
But was it the racism, the Southern strategy, or the backlash to like the ERA and the women's movement? Because that was there too. And you mentioned that like some of the first union jobs to get shipped off were in the textiles,
right?
Well, and that's something that you traditionally think of as quote unquote women's work, right?
Right. And they discussed it as such too, to say, oh, these are just women's jobs. They just need to go back home. These are single ladies probably putting everything together because anyway. But your point to Ronald Reagan, in the 50s, he was a Screen Actors Guild member and became president as a union member. But he was the worst at what he did. And what I mean by that is, as a union person, once you understood what collective bargaining does, the contract and the language, you've wrestled through that, because when you're in a leadership position like he was in the 50s, he was down there hammering out these agreements, talking to the millionaires about how they're going to compensate these people and what language we're going to have for it. Well, fast forward to him being the guy, the president. The last thing he was going to do was do anything for working folks, because that wasn't who he was beholden to. He was beholden to the millionaires who put money in his hands so he could be on one of 3 TV channels back in those days in the 70s. Those 3 channels were the way that they communicated to America. You saw the 5 o'clock news with a Ronald Reagan piece at 15 minutes into the news. And then at 5:30, you'd see another Ronald Reagan piece and think, golly, we got to vote for him. He's going to be great. And he had the flag waving behind him and all those glorious things he was going to do for America. What he was doing was taking care of that small group of people who, again, the GOP is locked onto and stayed with all the time. I think the biggest thing that Reagan has done for us was to drop the fairness doctrine. Now, let's say that, because to understand that a little bit, there were 3 channels at the time. It was ABC, NBC, CBS. Those 3 channels were in competition with each other. That was it. So there's a big pie for viewership, and you could pretty much put it in 3 slices, depending on what your favorite show was on Saturday or Sunday or Friday night, and that's where you got your viewers. The big thing that changed was, once that fairness doctrine was dropped, and let's explain that for a second. Fairness doctrine allowed that if you had Mark on talking about labor unions, you had to also allow on the TV channel an opposing view in the same 2 or 3 minutes to make sure that that was done. Once that was erased and taken out of the system, there was nothing. It was free for all. And that birthed CNN and others like that, those cable news networks, and then expanded your cable provider. And this thing kind of blew up quickly. But what people miss is that was the birth of Rush Limbaugh. and every other cheap knockoff guy here in Fort Wayne or in Bloomington or somewhere else.
It wasn't just TV, it was radio too.
It was radio too. And so once that happened, you brought hate radio. So if you're driving to work or you drive a truck every day and all you do is listen to this guy for 3.5 hours, grind on about how horrible labor unions are, how bad union teachers are, you think you might be onto something here. I don't know. Strictly an opinion, not based in fact. And that was the difference. You left news and now you went to opinion. And that opinion was anti-worker, anti-union. What people didn't understand at the time, the worker went to work and clocked in, did his job as a union member, but was listening to this and learning and then passing on to spouse and or children. Hey, you know what? These guys they're all crooked. And sure enough, some union guy is dirty and they have to send him to jail. Well, guess what? If you look at corporate America, they're even more dirty. We followed the same hierarchy in unions to build just like they did, but they're plenty dirty. Okay.
And yes, and dirtier. I mean, we've seen what that class of folks have been up to with these recent releases of this Epstein files.
Couldn't say it better myself, sir.
With the the end of the fairness doctrine and the rise of right-wing hate radio,
right?
I rush like you described the radicalization of my own father.
Totally. My father was exactly the same. Yeah.
I talked to a documentary filmmaker. Boy, it's been over a year ago now. Jen Senko, who did a documentary called "The Brainwashing of My Dad," and it talked all about how her father, got sucked in with the Rush Limbaugh, and it's not just the one-sidedness. It's also like the use of emotional language, and radio especially is a very intimate medium. It's like, this is your friend, this is your buddy, you're going to hang out all day, and you get into that. But and then back to the gender thing, right? The feminazis and whatnot, and he sort of they set labor against each other. You have your blue collar jobs, your auto workers and whatnot, and they're pitted against the white collar professional unions, the teachers, like you mentioned, government employees especially, and they split the coalition, I think, between different kinds of workers. So
they segregated everything, which is their idea.
I don't know. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, one of the things they did was find a way to make sure we could find those secret little issues that the nurses, okay, there's some nurses that are unionized. Well, these nurses aren't unionized over here. So let's put this wedge between them, talk about things, make them feel uncomfortable. What we're missing here is that the folks that did this whole shovel the coal onto this fire here by stoking all these fears were stepping back and doing the bidding of the billionaires. So I don't know if they got paid to do it or how it worked out, but there was money in it, and that's how the whole thing worked. If you understand how they feed that system to feed the information to everybody, it was always based in misogyny. It was based in race as well, because we talk about Hispanic and or Black folks, the same situation. They would treat them just as poorly because we're talking about white radio. Really is what it was. It was hate radio, and it was based in misogynistic and white guy. Grab them with the right information. They would take that and walk home with it and make sure that the rest of the house got to hear about those type of things too and understand where that opinion is. I mean, like your documentary filmmaker you talked about, I know people like that too. I lived through it. I got to the point where I said to my father late in his life, I said, look, let's just not even talk about it because you and I are not going to agree on this. Let's not fight about it. I only get to see you for a little bit of time here. I really don't want to argue about this thing every time. Well, you should read this and you need to look at that. You need to listen to this guy. And I remember him getting really mad at me when I told him that some Fox host was a complete asshole. And he's just like, so, and of course my mother's like, why do you do that? Sorry, I have an opinion.
You mentioned we were talking about the gender factor, right? Especially with the public sector unions, teachers and nurses and things like that. Well, okay, those are government jobs paid for with taxpayer dollars. Same thing.
That was that wedge issue.
The federal government was like the largest employer of African American folks in this country.
Yes, and they were professional people.
One of the few ways black families could gain entry into the middle class.
Well said.
And, can't have that.
Right, right. Well, and it goes back to they bring back the idea that the government is out screwing you in some way, taking things from you, and these people don't do anything. They're unelected bureaucrats, and they're making decisions. You didn't put them there; they just got hired. And then this whole DEI thing, that's today's version of yesterday's racism. Hello. Let's go back and repackage it and sell it again. So here we are, but that's an anti-worker sentiment is what it is. I mean, for what it's bare, if you rip it apart and look at it, that's really the bare bones of it, is they try their best to make sure that they can pit all the workers against each other. What do we do as labor unions? Solidarity, bring people together, common good for that bargaining unit, that group. We work together to do those kind of things. One of the things, I've been on strike a few times in my life, and I've been to many strike lines in support of Teamsters, teachers, whoever it would be. And every time you're there, you understand the solidarity that those people feel. And that's what the boss and the boss above them cannot stand, is the people enjoying themselves, having a good time, making sure that they're getting their message sent while their bargainers are at the table, getting them an agreement that they can be comfortable with and vote yes to. That's what they don't understand. Those managers will never get that feeling and understand that feeling. And the managers above those folks that are at the table or having someone, their attorney at the table negotiating, tell them, hey, don't give them this, don't give them that. In the end, they have to, or they can't get an agreement. And they're really saying that labor is trying to ruin me. No, labor is an expense. Companies always say that. That's the first thing they talk about is, well, let's talk about labor. Well, labor is costing us a lot of money. You wouldn't be in the position to even question what labor is doing if you didn't have them. You have to have them to make your millions. This is how it works. Compensation, fair compensation, doesn't happen because the bigger that boss's paycheck gets, he wants to make sure it stays or grows. I don't think my folks down here working are going to get that. I've talked to several employers in my time living here in Indiana, and they say, you know what? I don't need a union. My guys don't need a union. I take good care of them. Well, what they did was there was a union wage, and they come in right below it here to keep that union out. That was their goal. So unions set a standard, and that standard set in whatever community you're in is what we follow up with. I had an argument at the credit union with a sister behind the counter. She goes, looks like somebody's a little greedy. And I said, really? Hold on a moment. So I went, after I was done with my transaction, I went over and talked to the manager. I said, look, I'm not asking her to be fired or anything like that. I'm just pissed off that that would happen. I'm going to consider taking my money out of here, the mortgage, the things like that, because this is how I'm going to be treated. Now, she was apologetic the next time I came in and I guess he said something to her. I don't know what it was. And I said, you don't have to apologize. I'm just hoping that was a learning experience for you as it was for me, because you can say that. That's your opinion. I agree. This is America. I don't mind you saying it to me, but I'm going to ask that someone talk to you about it, because I was pissed that would be a thing that you carry around, and you want to just say that right here. The wage you make here, you should be unionized too. That didn't go over well because I heard from the manager at the credit union later.
well, that's what they always do, right? They pit folks against each other. They pit workers against each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess just like, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. You know, with things like blue collar jobs, a lot of those things are tedious and potentially unsafe, and the automation has a place, I think, in certain things. Now you can't automate away teachers, you can't automate away nurses, you can't automate a lot of those caring jobs. And I think I don't know if it's like a sense of resentment or what, or if it's I don't know. How do you explain that?
Well, there's a mindlessness to a lot of manufacturing jobs. If you're especially in an assembly line position where every minute you got to just keep doing that same task. Horn blows, you get to stop. Oh, horn blew again. I got to go back to work. Your body, your mind, everything's in there. You should be compensated for what you do to your body, your mind through all that. And it's not for everybody. That's where folks get into a trade or get into nursing, something like that. But what's some of the first things that happen, like at nursing? These people are on strike. There's thousands of people on strike right now in New York, California, Michigan, Minnesota. There's quite a few more than you know in the nursing profession who are on strike right now or gonna go on strike because safe staffing. And it's for their own longevity,
God.
but it's
Yeah.
also for the patient care. So you want a nurse to handle 12, 10 patients at one moment? No, it's an impossibility, much less chart everything and take care of all their needs. At the same time, you're fixing room A, room B's got a horn going, hey, 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 I want this. I want ice on my drink. I need this. I need that. Everybody's running crazy, short staffing everything because it's about revenue. It's about taking care of shareholders. That's where the business mindset's at. And the folks down there on the ground doing that work are the ones reminding them, hey, you got to take care of us. You're not doing that because they've been force fed this from the bosses on down that you're going to do this with less. Do more with less. Do more with less this time around. Next year, this time, we're going to have 4 less nurses on this floor. You're killing us here. It can't happen. It's an impossibility. A year later, it does happen. You have to understand that this is corporate driven. These are the models that are happening. I mean, I talked about off camera, we had this conversation. I sent you a note about it, was I want to normalize that when the media is standing, like IU Health is building a hospital here. When they cut the ribbon, they start digging the dirt to start the whole thing. No one in the media said, hey, what's the name of the labor union you'll be working with that represents the nurses here? No one asked that question. Let's normalize that. Let's bring that back to something we talk about. Who's going to represent the folks that are cleaning the place or doing your maintenance and making sure that HVAC is working here? What union is representing those folks that are working here? Those people would freak out. Well, there's no room for that. Yeah, there is room for that. And that's the reason for that, because you're going to short staff them if you don't. We just need to start having that as a regular conversation. I just don't think that's happening enough because our media folks, and we're watching this now, whether it's at a White House briefing or something else, are concerned about whether they're going to have a job tomorrow because they're going to get thrown out either by their boss because so-and-so complained about the questions they were asking. And that happens. And you get kicked out of the White House press pool because you asked questions they didn't want to be answering. That didn't happen with previous presidents, did it? It's only with this one.
You look at today, the day we are recording this interview, Mark, the Washington Post just fired a shit ton of people, and that's owned by Jeff Bezos himself, notorious union breaker, with Amazon. And
those are News Guild members. Yes, there are union members too that lost their jobs. Yeah, and that is the biggest thing. We are watering down the idea that journalism has any wealth or value. The only journalism they want is this opinion type of piece on these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 channels or whatever they are that the Republicans are pouring their money into right now to control, because they're controlling the narrative of what these people consume to try and make sure they drive them to say, oh, I hate unions. Oh, I hate that guy too because of the color of his skin. Oh, I hate that lady over there too because she's foolish. Or whatever it would be. They're the ones that keep creating this narrative over and over again. The folks that are asking the hard questions about Tulsi Gabbard or somebody else, well, we can't have that. Nope, get them out of here.
No, we can't have thoughtful discussion. We need rage bait. We need emotion. It kind of goes back to that whole Fox News mindset and the Rush Limbaugh mindset. You get people into a heightened state.
Here we are.
Angry.
Here we are.
They're easy to control. And,
right. The arc of time. Here we are.
Yeah. I'm glad we kind of arrived at Jeff Bezos because Amazon and their warehouses still are, to my knowledge, sort of at the center of the new unionization drive. Folks, wanting to organize their Amazon warehouses, things like Starbucks. I think I talked to Eric Blanc last year about this time, just as he was finishing up his book about the new union models, and things like the service sector becoming more unionized. So, we're seeing a bit of an upswing in union membership, but we're
plenty of
down
room
in the
for
bottom
growth.
of the trough, right?
Right. Plenty of room for growth. And I think let's talk about it for just a second, because like a United Auto Workers, that's a union that's been around for 80 plus years. They've got a history. They've done these things. Teamsters have been around for a long time. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Those are long-standing unions. When you look at the things that Amazon people are doing, as well as the baristas at Starbucks, I mean, that's some pretty ballsy stuff to step up and go, yeah, we don't have a union, but we're just going to go on strike and withhold our labor. whoa, whoa, whoa. So they don't have any resources. They don't have anybody negotiating with them. And they've got so many small stores. That's what they're doing, is making them suffer all the way through it. Because here in Fort Wayne, where I'm at, there are no people standing up and striking. There's people still going to Starbucks. Every time I see somebody carrying a Starbucks cup, I ask them, I said, why are you doing that? There's people on strike right now. Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't think of that, holding their cup. But you have to put your mind in that someone's suffering somewhere else and working really hard to try and change their life. You're not allowing to assist in that in any way. So that happened at Amazon as well. Now, to have Chris Smalls and the guys start their Amazon union thing, that's big stuff. I mean, they did get a lot of respect out of it from the people that Bezos and others that are trying to say, whatever, you're trying to start a union. Well, there's plenty of people have come and gotten involved with it. So you've got Teamsters are involved in it. There's some others that are helping out here and there. It's building, and it's bigger than you know. What we don't see on the news and our regular feed is what's going on the coast, what's going on in some community in Kentucky, where these Amazon warehouses are being held hostage for not taking care of those workers. And guess what? They are sitting down with them and starting to have these conversations, starting to build on contracts, getting those first contracts done. Tough way to go, but that's where people are at right now. There's a fight going on. We don't, because our media won't allow it, talk about a lot of that union stuff. There are plenty of magazines. There's plenty of independent writers who are out there chasing that, but you have to step into it and figure it out as to where that stuff's available to even find it, to consume it. It's just not on your channel changer just as fast as it is. There's plenty of YouTube channels. If you just search labor unions, next thing you know, you've got more than you ever know what you could do with, but you could also learn from that and figure out where you could fit into that too as a worker.
Yeah, with the Amazon warehouses, and they're dispersed. They're all over the place. They're everywhere. Starbucks, they're little stores all over the place. They're
By
everywhere.
design,
It's a lot harder. It's artificial. It's borders, right? It's artificial checkpoints, and it's a lot harder to organize organizations like that than when you got shift change at the auto factory
and you can catch them all coming out the door.
Guys all checking out at the same time, right? You can get them in one place.
Right. And that changed the dynamic of organizing as a whole, because you were stuck with trying to make sure the folks in New Mexico understood what was going on in Columbus, Ohio. And it's a different time now. The internet has created opportunities for us to have kind of great conversations and start meeting and understanding who's who, which has really helped those baristas at Starbucks to, really the Starbucks model is built. So you've really got 20 people who work at a store that's really not that big. And that's just, there could be 3 or 4 or 5 of them in your town. So the fact that you could get that to happen in Buffalo, New York, and kind of grow from there too. Baristas versus the Billionaire is a movie that's out now, is a documentary about all the things that have happened and what's transpired to where they are today. That's an interesting watch too. There's things like that happening. There's people putting money into making these documentaries because they agree and believe this story has to be told. We need to make sure Americans understand what these people are fighting for. And you've got anybody from a 40-year-old person down to a 20-year-old person working in that same situation saying, I need more. This is killing me. I cannot afford to live. Or they're 4 in an apartment, making a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 people because they can't afford rent if they were out there on their own. That's the reality of what life's doing for us. Public transportation is helpful, but in many cases, you don't get there. You don't have that thing to support it. If you're living in a rural Indiana town, you've got to have a transportation. You've got to have a car. You can't have a POS car. You have to have a car that you can rely on to drive 40 miles, 50 miles to work one day. So, if the salaries or the fee, what you're being fed financially from that corporation isn't there for you, you've got to have a fight in your hands. But you share that with everybody that works in that facility with you, whatever size or whatever place it is. That is what brings that solidarity together and understand we're in the same crap. We all share this same crappy situation. How can we make it better? We can band together and be the ones that move forward to try and march on the boss. Let them know what's going on. Tell them we're not taking this anymore. Challenge.
I think, Mark, I just saw maybe it was today, maybe it was yesterday. Walmart became like the first retailer to achieve a $1 trillion market cap. And we talked about Amazon and their effects on the economy at large, and even before them, it was Walmart and the Walmartification of the entire economy.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they just went, Walmart opens in your small town, it puts every little ma and pa out of business.
Right.
And folks come to expect the lower prices, and you get the cheap stuff. Maybe stuff is cheaper, and you think, oh, okay, well, my money's going a little bit further, I got cheap stuff, maybe I don't need a union now, and then the bottom drops out.
Right, right. It's the same model that Dollar General, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, all of those carry that same situation. It's a food desert. This town's 2,200 people in the middle of Illinois or something like that, and they bring a Dollar General in. And so what do all the folks that are elected representatives? We brought Dollar General here. Are you kidding me? They're going to employ 6 people, and they're going to pay them
Oh my
crap
God.
wages, and they're going to stack stuff out of a truck to the ceiling in this place. No, it's a horrible situation. It doesn't take care of anybody. It's not nutritionally valued or anything like that. It's a Band-Aid, but the model that they've made is built on the idea of the exploitation of these small communities to that end. And these are what's left over since Walmart came and wiped out a bunch of things. They're taking, real estate's pretty cheap when it comes to stuff like that. If it was sitting around, most of the time, that strip mall, they just hold on to it because they can use it as a tax break in some way too. There's really no reason to sell it or fill the damn thing. Doesn't really matter if they can or can't. There are all kinds of loopholes that these folks are playing that are anti-worker. We always seen that.
And the ownership class, the boss class, it's all the same. It's the same people who, like you said, they own the media. You can't get these stories out. It's hard. They don't want to talk about it, right? So you have to go find things on YouTube and
right. And you have to take the time to search it. Yeah, it's a hard way to go because it's not available to you. It's not in the first thing you look at. If you open up Facebook, that algorithm just brings you you like to watch the puppy videos? We got a bunch of puppy videos coming your way. You're going to love this. So that's the things that get in the way of us finding out the real things that are happening because they want to just feed you this stuff. And since everything's on your phone now, no matter where you go, it's necessary to just have whatever that video is. I got my earbud in, I can hear whatever they're saying. This is great. I don't need anything else like that. You're falling to what they built for you to fall for. So, unions are more places than you give it credit for. If you watched the Grammys last Sunday, that was huge. When I wrote them all down. So we have the Directors Guild of America. They were represented, all the directors and the people, the producers that made the thing happen. IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, the American Guild of Musical Artists, the American Federation of Musicians, Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television, Radio Artists, IBEW, Actors Equity for Live Theater and Stage Managers. All those things were just making the Grammys happen. Same with the Super Bowl. All those cameras that are running, all the people that are running around to make those things all happen, all union represented as well. The guys are in the control room, poking the buttons, making sure the cameras come up and running that big camera that runs around the Super Bowl. All those folks are union represented. So it's out there. You just don't even realize the stuff's right there in front of you too.
And I remember weren't the screenwriters on strike? Was that a year or two ago?
It was 2 years ago now.
They want to bring in this AI to start writing scripts for people. And my God, listen, I've used a little bit of AI in my time. It's useful for certain things, right? It's quite good at going through our transcript here and giving me timestamps for when we talked about certain things.
Great.
It's not good about creative work. It's not good about replicating human emotion, doing the thing. The reason you go to watch movies, the reason you watch TV shows, it's for the stories, right? And on that track, about AI.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the big things we're fighting about here in Indiana right now is these data centers. Now, you mentioned this a little bit up at the top of the show,
right?
That they're during construction. It's a lot of jobs. It takes a lot of people to make one of these giant data centers go.
Right.
But once it's built, it's only employing a handful of people, and those jobs that handful aren't unionized, so where does labor fit into this? Obviously, they want those upfront jobs, but if we're doing solidarity here, you don't want to help your brothers and sisters lose their jobs by having them automated away by AI.
Right. I think you're going to see as time goes on, because I listen to people say, well, AI is a little sloppy now, but it's evolving. It's going to get so good. That's like just saying the cyber organism, robot thing's just going to come in and, they don't march very well now, but we'll have a marching in line shooting guns. It's going to be awesome. They're going to be great. We're going to have a whole army of these machines. No, that's not going to help anybody. My point is that the biggest thing for us is to understand where this AI fits. There are some small little helpful things. Corporate America right now is hanging their hat on AI replacing everybody. There's accountants, people that are actuaries and numbers folks. They're just saying, well, we just pour the numbers into this machine here and it gives us all our answers. Yeah, you still need people to do the things that those folks have always done. They somehow thought that they were going to wipe out all the folks in the VA, Social Security offices, things like that, because we're just going to automate all that stuff. You don't need to do that. There's still a need for those people touching and working with the folks. When I say touching, sitting at a desk, talking to you about what your options are for when you retire, what your needs are for your VA situation. You can't just cut these things wholeheartedly and say, this is going to make America great again. It isn't. I mean, if there's any group of people in the last 12 months who've laid off more people, it's the party in charge right now. How about the state of Indiana? Same situation. We're not helping our workers by the work that they're doing at the State House right now. They're taking another axe to something. You just don't know what it is yet. You'll hear about it later on when July 2nd rolls around and this legislation takes effect, and you realize, what? Too late now. You didn't call back in the beginning. So getting back to your first question, where does AI fit into this? It's going to be very interesting because we're in that situation of right now, we're building the data centers. We got to have all these folks to do it. While that's happening, pipe fitters, millwrights, iron workers, electrical workers are aging out. There's a lot of people every day turning 65 years old. We need people that are 30 and 40 and 20 to come in to take these roles, which is dealing with an apprenticeship, at least 4 to 5 years in many cases, to get to where you understand what it is those journey persons do. They'll mentor you, they'll get you there, but you still have to have them. So this surge of folks retiring is creating great opportunities for apprenticeships in any of the building trades and others, because data centers are here to stay, like it or hate it. The unfortunate part, there's unknown environmental issues we don't know about yet. There's noise pollution things that we haven't really conquered yet. But the things that are happening right now, where there's stories that can be told and they're not widely told about those things, we have to try and figure out how labor plays into that, because we're standing on the precipice of something really ugly if it goes the wrong way, because you're not going to keep all those people you just trained employed if there isn't a job for them to go to or something else to build or to work on. So we've got to make sure we're taking those steps. I mean, the AFL-CIO is a labor federation, which is an umbrella organization that has multiple unions underneath it. And that's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest challenges they're facing in this year here. I listened to them talk about it last year as we go into this year. These are the things we have to tackle, because that's the first thing they want to do is replace all your reporters with AI. And you just say, hey, write me a story about Scott Aaron Rodgers and then they search the internet and find everything they can on you, and then they write their story. It's crap. That story's crap. There's no feeling, there's no life in it, and they didn't talk to you about it. They just took whatever they found in a far out of the way place of something you wrote in 1993, and there it is still on the internet or whatever it would be. So we have a lot of people having that discussion, but we're still in uncharted territory, which is frustrating because we want to say, oh, we got a handle on this. Well, we'd like to say that, but we don't really. We really have a bunch of unanswered questions right now. What is AI going to do to labor, and where is that going to fall? There's plenty of jobs that are still going to have to be done by humans. We know that. I mean, I'm living in this manufacturing world I've been in, and I've watched robotics come in and do a bunch of things, but you still have to have someone that feeds that robot the electricity, feeds its programming and understanding so that it can continue to do the things it does, and then fix it and repair it when something breaks down or dies. So there's room for that work, but the folks that were manufacturing and picking up the part that this robot's now doing don't have a job. I have to shuffle somewhere else. So a lot of things going on. Labor has a very interesting thin ice type of future looking ahead here too, because it could all fall apart just as fast as it's coming at us right now too. So I'm excited about great opportunities for plenty of people to get involved in things they couldn't have before, but I'm also worried about where those next steps are. And there's not a lot of pathway. We don't have like a roadmap. We could go, let's figure out where the next turn is. We're still figuring those things out on the fly.
Yeah. Well, Mark, the AI, we're in this time of artificial precarity, right? The billionaires own everything, so you get the urge to want to build these things that they provide good jobs, at least temporarily. We could be building things that are more useful to society than AI data centers. I love the idea of high speed rail. I mean, think of all the good paying union jobs that went into building the interstate highway system.
Big time.
We do imagine that on steroids with high speed rail. That's something that would actually benefit society,
Right.
and be there to keep on going in the future, right? And it's not just a one time thing. And I think about that, and just what could be if we didn't hand everything off to the private sector, if government actually invested in things for our people again, like they did back in the 50s, like when America was great, right?
Oh yeah. I still remember because I grew up in a neighborhood where the cement contractor who was building the interstates in the 1960s, that was his thing. He got an award this one summer. I remember in the fall there was a big deal because they were paving a mile a day. They were dropping that much cement. Well, that's been beat big time now, but at the time that was a big deal that they were paving a mile of that every day. Well, those guys were working 7 days a week. Those were union gigs. That's that job that they had. The infrastructure of that is always under construction. I mean, there's this meme you see of,
Mark, I'm from Northwest Indiana. They've been building 994 for my entire lifetime.
Thank you. I was just going to say that there's a meme of Back to the Future where the professor is getting out of the DeLorean and telling Marty, he goes, Marty, I just came from 2055 and everything in Chicago is still under construction. So it's like, yeah, that's totally true. But it's one thing leads to another, leads to another. I mean, it's the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 in the Chicagoland area. They're killing it up there, but they're building roads on the regular. They're on the north side. They're on the, outside in the bypass that goes around. It's just everything's going on. That's just Chicago. Let's talk about Philly. What's going on in Baltimore? What's going on in, Boston right now? And these are jobs that consistently can put people to work, but we have to have the support of government. It's always been there. Those jobs didn't just happen because the private sector said, I got a couple of million, let's build some roads. It's not like that. We need to have these things happening. And what is the first thing that happened in the last 12 months? We're not paying for that. I don't like that state. We're not going to give them money. Stop what they're doing. Tell them to shut it down. Wind turbines? Oh, heck no. We're not doing that. While we do that, we put people out of work. Now they're in a precarious situation where they don't know if tomorrow's promised to them like it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So the things you're seeing today, infrastructure-wise, weren't done by the current party in charge. That was done by the previous administration who made sure this stuff was going to go on. Yeah. We're putting a stop on a number of things that's really affecting really good jobs right now.
And for all of President Biden's failures, and there were many, he was a very good president for labor.
And making infrastructure things happen, because those things snowball. There are people who have companies today because someone came to the community and started building things, which provided an opportunity for this smaller company to start over here. I mean, I've talked to a couple different electricians in my life who talked about the apprenticeship they did. They spent 20 years working in the industry. Then they formed their own company and went out and started doing specialty things and were able to employ 2 or 3 other people with a van full of tools. Wonderful. Those are the kind of things that America's been built on. But if you break it down to where we are today, we're shunning all that now. We're telling you, no, we don't need any of that stuff. Well, the private sector will take care of everything. It can't. It's not built for that. We do have to have, that was a bread and butter item, which was being those construction people, fixing those things, building those things, being innovative and figuring out how we can get this done. How do you build that bridge? I mean, that Gordie Howe bridge they built there north up to between Detroit and in Ontario, Canada. When that thing came together, it was just amazing to watch what that thing did in just a 4-year span. They put that thing together. That wasn't just because Ontario decided, hey, we got some money. What do you got, Michigan? That thing happened because of federal monies that were put on the table for that thing to even start. So that's where we're not at right now. People talk infrastructure, they just don't deliver the legislation to support it.
Yeah. So, Mark, we got less than 5 minutes left. I did want to. Somebody asked a very interesting question in the chat, and I hope you can, just take two or 3 minutes to answer it before we got to wrap up. But Mysteria asks, from your perspective, what policies or bargaining strategies are most urgent for unions to adopt so workers aren't left behind in an AI-driven economy?
The first things first are making sure that the folks that are doing anything that's going to be impacted by AI, and that's still dicey to say, what is that? What's coming at me? If you're manufacturing something, you're putting, part A into part B into part C, and then hand it to somebody else who continues down the alphabet to figure out how to put it all together. Those things are still tedious little things that have to be done by hand. You can't really allow a robot to do those kind of things. Legislation is happening to free up anybody to try and stop them from doing what they want. They want to give the freedom to do whatever. Like we're talking about that in the State House right now, saying, hey, you can build whatever you want on this property. We don't even care if it's an oil dump or you don't want to dig a big hole and pour chemicals into it. You can do whatever you want. We just don't need to worry about the EPA or anything else. At the same time, folks are working in a situation where it's nursing. You're still going to have those nurses understanding and dealing with those patients. So AI isn't going to come take those jobs. Those are still there. The biggest thing we have to do is make sure that when we're talking about this stuff, that we do band together to get a union, to bring that union in, to put it in black and white on paper, to have a contract with a beginning and an end to it that gives you these opportunities and you're protected by that. That's the hardest part about it. We say we build solidarity by making sure that the workplace has a collective bargaining agreement. Those are wonderful things. Collective bargaining is an important piece of everybody's workplace because millionaires are dealing with collective bargaining. What?
Yeah.
Baseball players, basketball players, the football players, any of these pro sports, the Indy Fuel, the Fort Wayne Comets, East Coast Hockey League, that's minor hockey league. They had union representation. They had 2 days off in December this last year because they went on strike, shut down games. Guess who came to the table real quick? All the owners and all the people with the money. And they made sure that they did meet all those requirements. So people can benefit from that, but you have to take a hard stand. And that's the toughest place to be because you think about, well, I've got my kid in school. I've got all these bills I got to pay and I'm going to go on strike. What the heck? How do I do that? It's a stressful situation. But when you band together, you all share that solidarity. It's easy to say, but once you're into it, you'll get that feeling, you'll understand it. And the backside of it is when you come out of all that, you have that collective bargaining agreement, you see what you gained from it. That's the stepping stone to bigger things down the road too in the future. These businesses can afford it. Don't let them tell you they can't. They can. They just decided to take the pie and give you this sliver. At the same time, they're taking care of somebody over here who's going on vacation on the back of you, the work you did.
They can't do it without us. Mark,
Correct.
So great to have you. Always a wealth of knowledge. Love having you around. It had been entirely too long. Let's do some more stuff together in the future. One last time before we got to run, where can the folks find you?
You can find me anywhere. Just search My Labor Radio for the podcast. It's MY Labor Radio. And you'd say, why would you choose a name like that? Because it was available. That's why I got the website, My Labor Radio. So I chose that because all the labor radios were taken at .com, .anything. So stick around. You can find me anywhere. Just search My Labor Radio on all of the socials. I'm out there too, My Labor Radio. Send me a note. Tell me you're out there. We'd love to talk.
Thank you, Mark. Great to have you. Listen, hey, maybe sometime you can stop by on a Sunday morning for Who's Left This Week. We stream that live every Sunday morning on YouTube, Facebook, and of course at the new progressiveindiana.net. It is Indiana's most thorough weekend news and politics talk show. It is a lot of fun if you can call following the news in this timeline fun. My panel and I every week go around the corn to cover all of the week's top Indiana news, and we look at international and U.S. stories through a Hoosier lens. I hope to see all of our folks there in the comments section, but if you can't make it, it will be available for download later Sunday afternoon. Thanks once again to Mark for this interview, and thank you for being here with us. One last reminder to please consider supporting Who's Left and the wider Progressive Indiana network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on most of them. It is at PIN Indiana on Blue Sky and TikTok, where you don't get that many characters. You can find me online at Who's Left on most of your social media sites. DM me anywhere with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or you can email me at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward this show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left Podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.